Welcome to The Veil, a show journeying through David Eddings' series about his world from the Belgariad. Today we are going to explore the life of ancient Belgarath, the Eternal Man and the first disciple of Eldor. Sometimes authors of fantasy series create a story that has a cloudy and often mystic backstory. They explain how things got to be poorly or don't do it at all. However, David Eddings decided to write a history of the world that he created in the form of Belgarath the Sorcerer. I'm Jonathan Tarrant, and today we are going to delve into the deep and dirty of the story of Eddings' universe, including how this is really a history story, how it adds to the character of Belgarath the Sorcerer from the other books in the series, and compare the writing style of his different works. At the end of his last 5-book series, The Malorian, Eddings has some of the characters from that series ask Belgarath to write a history of the world, since he is the only living being on the planet to have lived through it all. Belgarath says, "Since I alone know the beginning and the middle and the end of it, it falls to me to commit it to perishable parchment, an account of what really happened on Eddings 12. He has decided that using a character that he created to tell the story of his world would work really well, and since he had a character that had been there since the beginning, why not use him to tell it?" Another but less pronounced reason we have this book is to further provide details about the 7-year-old life of Belgarath. I know this sounds insane, but sorcerers in this series are impervious to aging. Since most of the other characters grow up in a sense in his other books, we know what happened in their lives to make them who they are, but Eddings never really told a lot about the backstory of Belgarath. We get a few snippets here and there, but that isn't fully enough to characterize a 7,000-year-old man. In the book we are looking at, all of the examples of why Belgarath the way that he is are very long, often 2 to 3 pages, meaning there really isn't much of a way to cite them. The way that this book was written was completely different than the previous books that Eddings had wrote. In the preceding 10 books, he had taken on a third-person view, focusing on the character of Belgarath and what he thinks. In Belgarath the Sorcerer, Eddings wrote in a first-person style. Belgarath, who is writing the story, occasionally inserts his own thoughts on what he's done and how things turned out. While we get to see some of what Belgarath is thinking in the other books that focus on him, it's not to the extent that it is in Belgarath's books. I moved around quite a bit. There were still marriages to arrange and an occasional murder. Does that shock you? It shouldn't. I never made any pretense at being a saint, and there were people out there in the world who were inconvenient. Eddings 17. This quote shows that Belgarath thinks about how the things that he is writing will affect the way that people think about him, and that he often breaks the fourth wall, something that is done to increase the experience of the reader here. This kind of thing never happened in the Belgariad or the Malorian. In the beginning of the book, some of the characters that we see in his other books convince Belgarath to lay down a history of the world so that no one else does it and messes it up. Then he begins to tell the details of his life and how it started. He tells us how he first met Eldor, how Torek used the orb to crack the world, and how Belgarath, Cherek, Dras, Algar, and Riva took the orb back, and how Torek invaded the West, and many, many other events we hear tales about in the first 10 books. To fully understand how Belgarath the Sorcerer, the book, fits in, it would be a good idea to read the preceding 10 books before so you have a basic understanding of who people are. Thank you for turning in, and be sure to catch the next edition of The Veil.